Hey everyone! Today I'm going to be reading chapter 15 from the book Momo by Michael Ende. And this chapter is called Found and Lost. Momo got up early the next morning and set off in search of Guido's house. Cassiopeia came too, of course. Momo knew where Greenhill was. A residential suburb several miles from the amphitheater, it lay on the other side of the city, near the housing development's identical rows of identical flats. Greenhill was a long walk. Although Momo was used to going without shoes, her bare feet were aching by the time she got there, so she sat down on the curb to rest a while. It really was a very smart neighborhood. The streets were broad and clean and deserted. In gardens enclosed by high walls and iron railings, fine old trees reared their branches to the sky. Most of the houses set in these gardens were long, low, flat-roofed villas built of concrete and glass. The smooth expanses of lawn in front of them were lush and green. They positively cried out for children to turn somersaults on them, but not a soul could be seen strolling or playing anywhere. Presumably, the owners didn't have time. Momo turned to Cassiopeia. If only I knew how to find out where Guido lives, she sighed. You will, the tortoise signaled. You really think so? Momo said hopefully. Hey, you grubby little brat, someone said behind her. What are you doing here? Momo turned to see a man in a spotless white jacket. She didn't know that such jackets were worn by the servants of the rich. Good morning, she said, getting up off the curb. I'm looking for Guido's house. Nino told me he lives here now. Whose house? Guido's. He's a friend of mine, you see. The man in the white jacket glared at her suspiciously. He had left the garden gate ajar, and Momo could see inside. Some dogs were frisking around on a big stretch of lawn, and a fountain was playing in front of the house. Overhead, in a blossom-covered tree, perched a pair of peacocks. Oh, Momo exclaimed, what pretty birds! She started to go inside for a closer look, but the man in the white jacket grabbed her by the scuff of her neck. No, you don't, he said. Some nerve you've got, I must say. Then he let go of her and wiped his fingers on his handkerchief, looking as if he'd just touched something unpleasant. Momo pointed through the gate. Does all that belong to you? She inquired. No, snapped the man in the white jacket, sounding more unfriendly than ever. Now, clear off. You've no business here. Oh, yes, I have, Momo said firmly. I've got to find Guido, guide. He's expecting me. Don't you know him? There aren't any guides around here, the man retorted, and turned on his heel. He had gone back into the garden and was about to slam the gate when a thought seemed to strike him. You don't mean Girolamo, the TV star. That's right, Momo said eagerly. Guido Guide, that's his real name. Can you tell me which his house is? Is he really expecting you? The man demanded. Yes, truly he is, said Momo. He's a friend of mine. He pays for everything I eat at Nino's. The man in the white jacket raised his eyebrows and shook his head. These showbiz people, he said acidly. They get some crazy notions sometimes. All right, if you really think he'll welcome a visit from you, his house is right at the end of the street. So saying, he slammed the gate behind him. The word show-off appeared on Cassiopeia's shell, but only for a moment. The last house on the street was surrounded by a high wall, and the gate was made of sheet metal like all the rest, so it was impossible to see inside. There wasn't a nameplate or a doorbell anywhere in sight. Can this really be Guido's new house? Said Momo. It doesn't look at all the kind of place he'd choose. It is, Cassiopeia signaled. But why is it all shut up? Momo asked. I'll never get in. Wait, was Cassiopeia's advice. Momo sighed. I may have to wait a long time. Even if Guido's home, how will he know I'm here? The tortoise's shell lit up again. He'll come, it said. So Momo sat down right outside the gate and waited patiently. Nothing happened for such a long time that she began to wonder if Cassiopeia had made a mistake for once. "Are you absolutely positive?" she said after a while. Cassiopeia's reply was quite unexpected. Her shell said simply, "Goodbye." Momo gave a start. "What do you mean, Cassiopeia? You aren't leaving me, are you? Where are you going?" "To look for you," was Cassiopeia's still more cryptic response. At that moment, the gate swung open without warning, and out shot a long, low, elegant car. Momo, who jumped back only just in time, fell head over heels. The car sped on for several yards, then screeched to a halt. An instant later, Guido jumped out. "Momo!" he cried, flinging his arms wide. "If it isn't my own beloved little Momo!" Momo scrambled to her feet and ran to him, and Guido snatched her up in his arms and covered her cheeks with kisses, and danced around in the road with her. "Did you hurt yourself?" he asked breathlessly, but instead of waiting for a reply, he went on talking 19 to the dozen. "Sorry I gave you a fright, but I'm in a tearing hurry, late again as usual. Where have you been all this time? You must tell me the whole story. I'd given you up for lost, you know. Did you get my letter? Yes? So it was still there, eh? Fine, so you went and had a meal at Nino's, did you? Did you enjoy it? Oh, Momo, we've such a lot to tell each other. So much has happened in the last few months. How are you, anyway? What's the matter? Lost your tongue? And what about old Beppo? What's he up to these days? I haven't seen him in a month of Sundays. And the children, what about them? Oh, Momo, I can't tell you how often I think of the times we spent together when I used to tell you stories. Good times they were, but everything's different now. You can't imagine how different." Momo had made several attempts to answer his questions, but since his torrent of words never dried up, she simply watched and waited. Guido looked different from the old days. He was well groomed and smelled nice, but there was something curiously unfamiliar about him. Meanwhile, some people had emerged from the limousine and walked over to them. A man in a chauffeur's uniform, and 3 hard-faced, heavily made-up young women. "Is the child hurt?" asked one, sounding less anxious than disapproving. No, not a bit," Guido assured her. "We gave her a fright, that's all." "Serves her right for loitering outside the gate," said the second young woman. Guido laughed. "But this is Momo, my old friend Momo." The third young woman raised her eyebrows. "So she really exists, does she? I always thought she was a figment of your imagination. We must issue a press release at once. Girolamo reunited with his fairy princess. Something along those lines. I'll get onto it at once. What a story! The public will lap it up." "No," said Guido. "I'd rather not." "What do you say, Momo?" asked the first young woman, fixing Momo with an artificial smile. "Surely you'd like to see your picture in the paper, wouldn't you?" "Leave her alone," snapped Guido. The second young woman glanced at her wristwatch. "We're going to miss our flight if we don't get a move on, and you know what that would mean." "God almighty," Guido protested. "Can't I even have a quiet chat with a long-lost friend?" He turned to Momo with a rueful grin. "You see? They never give me a moment's peace, these slave drivers of mine. Never." "Suit yourself, but we're only doing our job," the second young woman said tartly. That's what you pay us for, Lord and Master, to arrange your schedule and see that you stick to it." Guido gave in. Okay, we'd better get going. Tell you what, Momo, why not come to the airport with us? We can talk on the way, and afterwards my chauffeur will drive you home, all right?" Without even waiting for an answer, he seized Momo's hand and towed her to the car. The 3 secretaries got in behind while Guido sat up in front with Momo wedged in beside him. "Right," he said. "I'm listening. But first things first. How come you disappeared like that?" Momo was on the point of telling him about Professor Ora and the hour lilies when one of the secretaries leaned forward. "Sorry to butt in," she said, "but I've just had the most fabulous idea. We've simply got to introduce Momo to the top brass at Fantasy Films. She'd be perfect for the title role in your next film, the one about the girl who becomes a vagrant. Think what a sensation it would make. Momo, starring Momo. Didn't you hear what I said? Snapped Guido. I don't want her dragged into anything of the kind. Is that clear? The young woman bridled. I just don't get it, she said. Most people would jump at such a heaven-sent opportunity. Well, I'm not most people, Guido shouted in a sudden fury. He turned to Momo. Forgive me. You may not understand this, but I don't want these vultures sinking their talons into you as well as me. At that, all three secretaries sniffed and looked offended. Guido groaned aloud and clutched his head. Producing a small silver pillbox from his pocket, he took out a capsule and gulped it down. Nobody spoke for a minute or two. At length, Guido turned to the trio behind him. I apologize, he mumbled wearily. I wasn't referring to you. My nerves are on edge, that's all. We know, said the first young woman. We're getting used to it. And now, Guido went on, smiling down at Momo rather wryly, let's not talk about anything except the two of us. One more question before it's too late, the second young woman broke in. We'll be there any minute. Couldn't you at least let me do a quick interview with the kid? That's enough, roared Guido, beside himself with rage. I want a word with Momo in private. It means a lot to me. How many more times do I have to tell you? The second young woman was just as irate. You're always complaining because the publicity I get you doesn't pack a big enough punch. You're right, Guido groaned, but not now. Not now. It's too bad, the second young woman pursued. A human interest story like this would be a real tearjerker. But have it your way. Maybe we can run it later on when... No, Guido cut in. Neither now nor later. Not ever. Now kindly shut up while Momo and I have a talk. Well, pardon me, the second young woman retorted angrily. It's your publicity we're discussing, not mine. Think carefully. Can you really afford to pass up such an opportunity at this stage in your career? No, I can't, Guido cried in desperation, but Momo stays out of it. And now, for pity's sake, leave us in peace for 5 minutes. The secretaries relapsed into silence. Limply, Guido drew his hand across his eyes. You see how far gone I am? He patted Momo's arm and gave a wry little laugh. I couldn't go back now, even if I wanted to. I'm beyond redemption. Guido's still Guido, remember? Well, Guido isn't Guido anymore. Believe me, Momo, there's nothing more dangerous in life than dreams that come true, at least when they come true like mine. I've nothing left to dream about, and not even you could teach me to dream again. I'm fed up to the teeth with everything and everyone. He stared morosely out of the window. The most I could do now would be to stop telling stories and keep mum, if not for the rest of my life, at least until people had forgotten all about me, and I was poor and unknown again. But poverty without dreams? No, Momo, that would be sheer hell. I'd sooner stay where I am. That's another kind of hell, but at least it's a comfortable one. Guido broke off. I don't know why I'm rambling on like this. You can't have understood a word. Momo just looked at him. What she understood, first and foremost, was that Guido was ill, gravely ill. She suspected that the men in gray were at the bottom of it, but she had no idea how to cure him if he didn't want to be cured. I've done nothing but talk about myself, he said. It's high time you told me about your own doings. Just then, the car drew up outside the airport terminal. They all got out and hurried into the foyer, where a pair of uniformed stewardesses were already waiting for Guido. Some newspaper reporters took pictures of him and asked questions, but the stewardesses started fussing because there were only a few minutes left before takeoff time. Guido bent down and gazed into Momo's eyes, and suddenly his own eyes filled with tears. Listen, he said, lowering his voice so the others couldn't hear. Stay with me, Momo. I'll take you along on this trip. I'll take you wherever I go. You can live in that fine new house of mine and dress in silk and satin like a real princess. Just be there and listen to me, that's all I ask. If you did, perhaps I'd manage to think up some proper stories like the ones I used to tell. Know what I mean? Just say yes, Momo, and everything will be all right again. Help me, I beg you. Momo's heart bled for Guido. She longed so much to help him, but she sensed that he was wrong. He would have to become Guido again, and it wouldn't help him at all if she stopped being Momo. Her eyes, too, filled with tears, and she shook her head. Guido understood. He just had time to nod sadly before he was hustled off by the 3 secretaries he employed to do just that. He gave one last wave in the distance, and Momo waved back. Then he was hidden from view. Momo could have told him so many things, but she didn't manage to say a word throughout their brief reunion. She felt as if, by finding him again, she had really and truly lost him at last. Slowly, she turned and made her way across the crowded foyer. Just as she reached the exit, she was smitten by a sudden thought. She had lost Cassiopeia as well. All right, that's the end of chapter 15. Thank you. Bye.